Hey, how you doing there again, folks? Me again, of course, Brandon Wenzel. Come back at you, another offering off my sampler platter. Yes, indeed, folks, sampler video series videos I've been doing for the while. I'll go over there, try out food and drink items. I eat stuff, I drink stuff. Then, folks, I'm gonna talk about stuff. I'm gonna let you know all that you need to know about hopefully delicious stuff. That time I'm doing this, folks, I'm not gonna lie, I am really excited for this one. So let's get into it. But folks, it is a super simple format. I'm going to go over there. I'm going to try out food and or drink items for you. Whilst I'm doing so, I'm going to yammer on about it for a bit. Whilst I'm doing all that, I'm inside my truck. And whilst I'm doing all that, I'm wearing a super cool shirt. Folks, why wear super cool shirts? I always like to highlight my super cool shirt. What super cool shirt am I wearing today? Boom! It's my Scold shirt. Featuring Mr. Tim Scold on the front, what with the guitar and screaming into the microphone and such. If you are unfamiliar with Mr. Tim Scold, he is a musician who has been around quite a while now. I believe since the late 80s. And the guy has been involved in just like all kinds of musical projects and collaborations and stuff. He's worked with all kinds of big names. He's been on soundtracks. Like, he's one of those guys who's like been in the music scene forever, who you might not know him by name, but chances are he's been involved in something that you enjoy, just by sheer, just amount of stuff that he's been part of. I was actually fortunate enough to see him in his solo project, and then just a few months later in his duo project with Nero called Not My God. And I actually went over there, like, both those shows were fantastic. I got some videos, I got some merchandise, obviously. If you happen to be interested at all, maybe you like sort of industrial, kind of dark electronica type stuff, maybe give him a look if you want to. Aside from doing the food review stuff, I also go over there and just have a bunch of concert videos on my channel. But anyway, what am I trying for you today, folks? Why am I so excited? Well, folks, because we're doing, boom, thumbs up! Specifically, this is Thumbs Up Cola from India. Sure. So, this is also like a special edition one. I think it's like for like the cricket championships, which I'm neither, good for cricket. I don't know anything about it. So this is an Indian cola product. Basically, the backstory to it was that, and I could be a little bit wrong, but like from looking into it, like Coca-Cola was like in the Indian market for a while, but for whatever reason they withdrew, and so an Indian company went over there and they wanted to go over there and replace, the loss of Coca-Cola. So they came up with their own recipe, their own thing. They came up with Thumbs Up Cola. I like the name. It's very, very uplifting. Eventually, Coca-Cola made their way back into the market because, of course, they were going to. And they actually went over there and just decided to buy up the brand. So it is now owned by the Coca-Cola Company. And I have heard really good things about this. Like, there are people who have said, like, this is pretty much one of the best colas you can get. I'm about to find out. So let's give it a go. Found this at a cool little Indian marketplace. Was going to review something from a place nearby. They weren't open, so let's give this a go. Instantly, I'm surprised, not like the same burst of carbonation that you get from like a Coke. Smells like a cola. Ooh. All right. I'll tell you this much right now. This isn't going to go over there and be my personal favorite cola of all time. But I like some of the things that it's doing. I can see why, especially like if you grew up with it, if this was like, your cola of choice, I could see why you would go with it. It's very distinct. There is sort of that notion that people have sometimes where it's like, oh, all colas taste the same. They do not. They do not. Coke and Pepsi taste different. For me personally, if we're talking just straight cola, my personal favorite cola is actually RC. I like RC quite a bit, which is a little bit blasphemous. They're kind of treated with a certain amount of disdain. But personally, I like RC. I appreciate that they were born from spite, and the spite makes it taste better, in my opinion. But this is definitely very different. It is definitely not as carbonated as the colas that we're familiar with here in the United States. I was expecting it to taste more like Coke. It instead tastes a little bit more like Pepsi. But it's not like it's just, oh, it's just Pepsi. No, it's definitely its own thing. For one thing, it's not as sweet as Pepsi. Pepsi's definitely got a little bit sweeter of a flavor profile. And then, because I've actually had Indian colas a couple times in the past. This is before I was even doing reviews. They like to go over there and kind of like add in their own, spices and mix-ins. Now, this is much closer to an American style cola than the colas that I've had in the past from India. Like, they were very heavily spiced, and one so much so that, like, I couldn't drink it. I couldn't finish it. Like, it was so, I don't want to say it was bad, but it was so off-putting to my palate. Just so unfamiliar from what I was used to. I couldn't do it. I had a couple of drinks. I drank about half of it, and I was like, I just couldn't do it. With this, definitely not the case. This is, at least, for the most part, decent. It's perfectly drinkable. Um, but it definitely, like I said, it's not going to replace like a proper cola from here in the United States for me. For one thing, the lack of carbonation, and to be fair, there is carbonation, but the less carbonation makes it almost feel like flat by comparison. It doesn't have that same bite to it that American colas do. Because we have more carbonation. Um, so that kind of is a little bit off-putting to begin with, and then, like I said, it just kind of tastes like, sort of like a Pepsi, like a less sweetened Pepsi. And then there's kind of like a little bit of like an Indian spice sort of hit at the end. And it's not like actively abrasive like I've had in the past, but it is unusual. It's not what I'm expecting from the from the flavor profile of a cola. Uh, but it's not bad. Like, it's not bad at all. And I'll give it a certain amount of credit. It could have just tasted like a generic cola. That's the thing. You know, I didn't know what this was going to taste like going into it. I was really hopeful because, again, I had heard really good things. It's not a bad cola. It's definitely doing its own thing, and I can appreciate that. It has its own personality. Whereas if it were just a baseline generic cola, you know, yeah, okay, those exist, they're fine, you can get them at lots of places. This isn't that. It's definitely doing its own thing, and again, I can understand why, if you grew up with this, why this would be your preference, in comparison to the other stuff, because it does have its own personality, it's doing its own thing. It is a little bit different than what I'm used to here in the West, but it's not a bad cola for what it is. It is flavorful. It's still a nice cola. Just a little bit different. Two questions have to be asked. Would I get it again? Would I recommend it? For one thing, I had to get it from an Indian store, so, I'd have to go back to the Indian. I guess that's the question. Would I go back to the Indian store for it? I'm going to go ahead and say, in relation to the two questions, occasionally, maybe, and sure-ish. Like, I'm very kind of on the fence with this one, because did it live up to the expectations that I maybe had in my head? Because, again, I had heard people say it was really good cola. And it's not bad cola, but it's just different enough from what I expect from a cola that it doesn't fulfill, that same expectation, what I was hoping for. But I do like it for what it is. And the fact that it is unique, and again, it has its own personality, I could see occasionally grabbing one if I happen to be in that area. There's a comic book store right by there. There's a couple good places to eat, So, I know I'm going to be out that way. I could see, having one or two in my fridge every now and again, just as, like, an alternative to the standard colas. But But it definitely, like I said, I mean, it's not gonna, I wouldn't take it over Pepsi or Coke or RC. I would probably, I'll say this, I would take it over like the generic brand colas that you get from like supermarkets and stuff. Because those, there's just, nothing to them. They're just cola. This, at least, I will remember this cola. And that in a good way. There is something to be said for that. If I'm recommending it to other people, I mean, it's not bad. If you're like me, where maybe you heard the legend of how great it is, I would say maybe bring your expectations down a little bit. Fundamentally, it's a cola. It's not like some perfect ambrosia, but it's not, something you should avoid. And, if you get the opportunity to try it, I would say try it. I think that if you're like me, where you're, used to like the American colas and stuff, I don't know that it's exactly going to be your thing, but by that same token, I don't know that it's not. If you want a cola that is a little bit less carbonated, it works in that capacity. Again, it's a little less sweet. So it could be for certain people, just not quite me. Even though, again, it's not a bad cola, and I certainly didn't dislike drinking it. So, 5 things before I get out of here, though. Have yourself a great rest of your day, spectacular rest of your week, monumental rest of the month, tremendous rest of your folks. You go over there, have yourselves a truly thumbs up-tastic rest of your life. Final 2 things. Number 1, try to bring some positivity in the world. It's not always possible. It is, however, always appreciated. But what you do can't do all the time. I know I can't do it all the time. Here's what you're going to do, folks. You're going to try not to be an asshole. Folks, it's not always the easiest thing in the world to not be an asshole. Trust me. I know it. I live it. I'm out there with you in it. And especially as I go over there and I try things on the show from different cultures and stuff, I do try to be very careful about how I present things. Because I don't want to go over there. I always like to be positive anyway. But I don't want to go over there and trash on, some other country's culture or something like that. Because, that's just, I'm just not familiar with it, I don't want to be a dickbag. But at the same time, I'm not going to go over there and upsell it if, I still have to be honest in my reviews. So, hopefully if anybody from India or, has an Indian background or even just really enjoys Thumbs Up Cola, hopefully they'll find this review to be, pretty fair for what it is. But, if nothing else, folks, when we do run into situations in our life that are stressful, frustrating, etc., take a step back, try to mitigate the level of assholishness in our lives, hopefully do better for ourselves and for those around us. Very final thing, folks, do the thing. Whatever the thing is for you, that's what I want you to go out and do. Folks, to any of my, the viewers who go over there and watch the show who maybe come from lands far away from America, or maybe, you're just from America and you know some shit, either way. If there's any, regional colas or anything like that, go over there and let me know. Hit me up in the comments section. Be like, hey, you should try this one. You should try this one. You should try this one. I will try to get a hold of them. I like colas. They're not my favorite sodas per se. I'm more of a root beer guy, but I like colas plenty. And, it is, sometimes colas kind of get looked upon as like, oh, it's just a cola. But, colas have their own personality and stuff. I'd certainly like to expand my palate more. Just saying. Or conversely, if you have a regional cola that you enjoy or something like that, and maybe it's even thumbs up, maybe you think my review of it sucks, sorry, I did what I could. Anyway, bye.